Welcome back on the AM show. We get into the papers now, and I'm joined by Mapitso Sibidi. We call her Maps around here. Good morning.
Good morning, Benjamin. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I love your green.
Thank you.
Forest green.
Yes, please.
Is that your ID I am seeing?
It is my ID.
We'll talk about this, the photograph on the ID.
The beautiful photograph that everybody sees. KLP yesterday saw it.
I've seen some of your pictures from back then, and
yeah,
jeez,
it's life. People grow.
Same with me. You should see some of my old photos.
I don't want to see. Hey. Yeah. But like KLP was looking at my ID card and was like, hey, wow, small girl. Yeah.
Small girl. You're no longer a small girl.
I'm not.
Definitely.
Because I've grown, and that's what people do. That's what happens. So, like, it surprises me when, like, oh, you've changed. Oh, was it supposed to stay the same? Like,
definitely not.
Use your head.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
I pity those who would go down that road with you, because I know how you would deal with them.
Oh, no. I'm actually a nice person. Sometimes I was just like, yeah, I have. I mean, what did you expect? For me to stay the same. But anyways, how are you?
Growth is a natural part of life.
Growth
if you're not growing, there's a problem.
There's a problem, in all aspects of life.
In all aspects.
So growing your career, relationships, everything, you know, just grow. And if you feel like spirituality, oh, definitely. And if you feel like you're not growing where you are, then it's probably time to, reevaluate some things, or maybe just move on to other things.
Anyway, before we get into the papers, and welcome aboard lawyer Paintso as well. Between yesterday and today, any story that has caught your attention that maybe you'd like to, something that stuck with you?
Which is also on the front page of Daily Graphic.
Right.
Our air quality, across air quality, has reached some positive levels. It's been hectic, hey? Because what's this thing called? Hamatan is supposed to be like over by like mid-January, end of January latest. But like it's like end of February. What's the date? End of February, and we're still seeing some really terrible weather. A lot of people have gotten sick because of this weather.
My mom is a victim.
You see, people who have asthma are really, really suffering. So that's why they're asking us to put on our masks and restrict outdoor events. We'll get into that.
But how did we get here? I actually took time. When I saw the first report, it was from one of these websites. So I had to go. I've seen other credible, websites, media portals, post it as well. And I got a bit concerned because there's been a trajectory. Sometime in, was it 2020 or 2021, actually? 2021. We placed 30th. Which was like, so the lower you are, the better your air quality. So you will see that some of those Scandinavian countries are in the top 10.
Yeah.
The Norways, the Swedens, the Finlands, the New Zealands. The higher you go, the closer you are to number one means your air quality is terrible. Very bad.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, we were, in 2021, our air quality was so bad in some areas, it was worse than in some of the areas across the world that are heavily polluted. And that was just 2021. So when I saw this, I just started thinking, wait, progressively,
what happened?
We've been getting there, and it appears we've done nothing about it. I mean, globally, we know that in Rio de Janeiro, especially Sao Paulo in Brazil, if you go to Delhi, in New Delhi, in India, and all of that, Beijing in China. But for us to find ourselves here, especially when we're not industrialized, we are not, pumping all these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, I find it rather worrying. And maybe just to add, it's even worse for me because already our land and water bodies are getting heavily polluted by galamsey. If our air is also polluted, Charlie, where are we going? What
are we going to do? Well, let's see how it goes. But yesterday when Dr. Henry Kokofi was speaking to Samakojo Brace on News Desk, he said another factor is the rickety cars on the roads. We need to put a halt to those cars on the roads because it's a major factor. So he was even making a joke that I'm sure Samakojo Brace's grandfather's car is still around or on the road, but we need to put a stop to that. Have you seen some of the Trotsky's? They are in terrible conditions and they are just emitting some terrible, terrible air. So there's a lot of things happening. Felicity was also saying that, okay, so with Felicity's, it makes sense because it's just passing through. But Felicity, who works at the GMET, was saying that so the dust from the Sahel regions has come down to West Africa, which is something that at least will just pass by. And I think it's not that worrying because it's like nature just doing what nature does.
That is not so worrying. I mean, we all grew up learning about the monsoon winds and the southeast and the northwest and whatever. But the more permanent, problem, because if, like I said, progressively, if our air quality has been diminishing, and mind you, we've been losing a lot of forest cover over the years. In the last few years, we've lost a lot of our forest cover, which is why I think we had the Green Ghana initiative as well. Not too many dynamics on that we can follow, but I think it's becoming problematic. And if this turns out to be true, this air quality assessment, and it's coming from a very credible institution, it then means that even after this period is gone, people are going to live with complications, health complications that may arise out of this. Well, let's welcome aboard Lawyer Paintel. He joins us for this conversation. Lawyer Paintel, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining the conversation. Before we get into the papers, we've been talking about air quality in the country. I don't know whether you've seen that report. Any quick reactions to it before Mapito takes us to the Daily Graphic? Hello?
Yeah, I saw it, and I'm surprised that we are living with such a situation in Ghana, and why possibly we've reached the proportions that are being reported. And that's the surprising part, because we've got the Environmental Protection Agency, which is the legislative body that's been set by statute and is supposed to regulate these matters and ensure that Ghanaians can avoid some of these things that are now being reported to us. So that's my initial reaction. Actually, it's quite surprising and it's very shocking, and the health implications are incalculable, and we are living in dangerous times. That is what it means, because this is self-inflicted. It doesn't come from anywhere. It comes from Ghana here, and we have to do something about it. That is what I want my initial reaction to be.
All right. Okay, let's dive into the Daily Graphic. I mean, that's their big story, air pollution alert. So put on masks and restrict outdoor events. This reminds me of 2020. When we're told to, if you don't have anything doing outside, stay at home, put on your mask. So if you can, please put on your mask. And if you also can, please restrict some outdoor events.
And I think even more importantly, if you know you're susceptible to, respiratory issues, you might as well around this time want to do that.
Definitely. All right, on page 13, Pangtown Hospital owes 2.8 million Ghana cedis to 25 suppliers. We also have Katie Harman supports cuts in imports. We also have Institute of Surveyors advocates for digital map for country. But I want to go into that story, the Pangtown Hospital story. Has become indebted to its suppliers that provide essential goods such as food and chemicals for the daily running of the health facility to the tune of 2.8 million Ghana cedis. It has compelled some of the hospital's most reliable and loyal suppliers to cease their services since last year, while others are threatening to institute legal action to force the hospital to settle its indebtedness. Although, per the law, mental services are to be free, but unfortunately, patrons still pay at facility levels due to some operational challenges. And we also have on page 16 and 17, Institute of Surveyors advocates for digital map for the country. They said that the last time a modern map base was created for the country was in 1974 and has since become old and outdated due to new developments. And according to the institution, the lack of digital map data was not only affecting geo-information delivery, but also compelling some public agencies to acquire and process their own data. Said the institution was, the situation, was frustrating development actors and creating challenges with accuracy and compatibility. And the last story I'm going to take is the DDEP, now panacea for economic recovery. That's according to Dr. Kwabena Dufo, who's the former finance minister. He said that the domestic debt exchange program is not a panacea for fixing the broken economy. According to him, debt treatment was only an aspect of the fiscal toolbox needed to such an ailing economy and could therefore not be used to bring about economic recovery. And I quote, "You cannot use the debt exchange program to bring about economic recovery if you do not link it up to the drastic drop in inflation, bank lending rates, and the size of the government." Lawyer Pencil, do you have any reactions to these three stories?
Which one in particular are we talking about?
So the Pantan Hospital owing 2.8 million Ghana cedis to 25 suppliers, and we know how mental health is treated in the country. We've done documentaries on how mental health is deteriorating in this country, how people are having a tough time, and now a hospital that is providing some sort of treatment to these issues is owing 2.8 million Ghana cedis to 25 suppliers.
I'm not too sure I'm surprised. I'll be pretending if I say I'm surprised. I mean, almost all government institutions are heavily indebted, left, right, center, to almost every supplier of services to them. And how and why we allow these things to happen under our watch and our eyes is one of the several issues we have in this Ghana. It's the issues about governance, the issues about management, the issues about who is in charge of what and whether we are doing it right. I remember in the history of these matters in our hospitals, it is when Dr. Frimpong Boateng became the CEO of Polebo Hospital that for the first time we saw an administration that was working really and truly hard to make the hospital self-sustainable. And there was so much noise and everything. This is one of the incidents that I very clearly recall because some exchanges took place, and then he was being accused of running the hospital as it was his family property. And instead of shying away from that allegation, he came back and said that that is how government institutions must be run. People must run it like they are private property. People must run it as if they own it. Because we never saw any businessman who ran his business in a way as to destroy it or in a way as to make it non-functional. But let me tell you, the attitude, I'm very sorry, some of my remarks are going to be very blunt. The attitude of Ghanaians generally when they run state institutions is that it's nobody's business. That is the picture that you get everywhere. I've been involved in several of these matters when I have looked with awe at how people have run government machineries, government institutions with such a lackadaisical, nonchalant attitude that is frightening. And I've ever had cause, I'm a lawyer, and you must know, I have ever had cause sometimes bringing actions against some institutions. I have maintained an argument that the directive principles of state policy under the 1992 Constitution requires that public officers must run the state and state institutions in a manner as to ensure that the state gets the best benefit out of it. And I always form the view that public officers who run institutions recklessly or negligently or without recourse to the proper ways of doing things ought to be mulcted in their pockets of the losses that occur to some of these institutions. Because you see, it is not only let me put it bluntly, I mean, it's not only stealing, it's not only corruption in the sense of people, what do you call it, stealing money and so forth, which is part of the problem of corruption. Negligence alone can cost the state institutions so much money, recklessness. I mean, people doing things without recourse to proper ways of doing it. And for me, please, I'm not making a commentary in particular about the Pantan situation because we don't have the facts. But I can readily and easily reach certain conclusions based on my observation of the way we do things in Ghana. And I'm telling you that if somebody has to go in, you will notice that some of the problems that they may have is because there are no prudent measures in place. I'm sorry if that's not a true situation on the ground, but I'm prepared to bet that somebody were to go into the facts. You'll find instances where there are no prudent measures in place, and everybody treats the place like it doesn't really part of his business.
Yeah.
And so that is how I want to view the situation. And sometimes it's not just the issues of funding, because everybody knows how the situation in Ghana is. And please, when you go to some of these places, even though services are supposed to be free, we all know and we all make all kinds of control. When you take somebody there, obviously you need to put something down, and whatever they are, it is about management. I will repeat that the issue is about managing whatever scarce resources that we have.
Yeah.
And even assuming for the sake of argument that it is lack of government funding, the people who run these places ought to be frank enough and put in place measures that will require that they'll be able to sustain these places that they find themselves and they are, in charge of. So I can run a running commentary, over this whole matter. We'll never end today. But that is briefly, in my view, part of the bigger part of the issue that we have in Ghana. Okay. That is my view.
All right.
Yeah.
And maybe just to top up on what he said, I just think we're not very serious about mental health in this country.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
It's so clear.
Yeah.
When you look at those who roam our streets, they have dignity. They are human beings. We shouldn't be letting them roam. Some of them half naked, others naked.
Yeah.
Just going round. Some of them are a hazard to other people. They shouldn't be in this state. And you look at our mental health facilities from Adabraka to Pantang and all other places, and it is clear that in this country, mental health is not our focus. That's all I wanted to add.
All right, so let me just take one more story. I already mentioned it. That's the DDEP, not a panacea for economic recovery. That's according to the former Minister of Finance, Dr. Kwabena Dufo. And I quote, he says, "You cannot use the debt exchange program to bring about economic recovery if you do not link it up to the drastic drop in inflation, bank lending rates, and the size of government." He says it could have been avoided. The situation could have been avoided, it found itself, if the government had not embarked on the kind of borrowing spree witnessed between 2017 and 2021 from both the international and domestic bond markets. Any quick reactions to this?
Yeah, so I'm not going to pretend to be an economist just because there's all these problems going on. But the point I'll make is that this debt exchange program is just a symptom of the larger problem we have in this country. I mean, you sit and you reflect on the economy. You see all the things around us. Even the Pantang Hospital story. It's all part of the bigger picture. And that's the way it is. And therefore, we must not, or I don't also believe that the government is pretending that that's the only issue on hand. But quite naturally, I agree with the sentiments of Dr. Dufour that the attempt to resolve the issue of the debt exchange must not be taken as a central issue for resolution by our finance minister or the economic management team of the government. It is only one of several things. It may be prominent because possibly people who are directly affected in their pockets have come on the street. But the bigger issues of this country, if all of us were affected, if we say we're going to come out on the street, I'm sure that the governance will even come to a halt. So I agree with the sentiments. What it means is that the government has a responsibility to not to highlight the issue of debt exchange as if the resolution of the debt exchange program or the debt exchange issue will resolve all our problems. It cannot be true, and it is not true. And I want to believe that possibly efforts are on the way to look and reflect on the other areas of the economy which are also in dire straits. So that's my view on that subject.
Sure. Benjamin?
All right, let's quickly get into the Daily Guide newspaper. And two stories I'll highlight, or maybe three of them. You can't arrest Nairi Mamprugu youth tryout. This Boku situation is getting pretty feisty. We all know the dynamics, we know the history to it, but I feel that there's a lot more we have to be doing to stem the tide of same, because especially of the terrorist threat in our sub-region. Let's not open ourselves up. There's also MPP-NDC fight over new ministers, and then Wele intestines import cost $165 million annually. That's according to Kobina Tahiru Hammond, the minister nominee, so to speak, for trade and industry. Let's take a quick look at some of those stories. So, Deputy Majority Leader Alexander Afenyo-Markin has taken a dig at the opposition NDC, accusing the party of attempting to obstruct government work. It comes after the Minority Leader, Dr. Atufor, acting on the instruction of the party's General Secretary, indicated that the minority MPs would not support a consensus vote at the Appointments Committee level for the nominees of the President. And he says, we are calling for the immediate reduction in the number of ministers from the current 86 to 65, the merger of ministries, for example, information and communication, transport and railways, chieftaincy and tourism, sanitation and local government, the immediate reduction in the number of political appointees at the office of the president, he announced. And you would find some very interesting portfolios at the office of the president. This for La Francophonie and that for, all kinds of positions that have been created. And that was, the exchange in Parliament. Let me also get to page 6. You can't arrest Nairi, Mamprugu youth cry out. And the youth of Mamprugu have vowed to resist any attempt by security agencies to arrest the king of the Mamprugu traditional area, Nabohugu Mahama Abdullahi Shariga II, and the newly enskinned chief of Boku, Wan Alhaj Seidu Abagre. On Sunday, February 19, 2023, an attempt by military personnel to arrest the king of Mamprugu and the newly enskinned Boku chief was resisted by the youth, who blocked the road leading to the Nairi's palace at Nalerigu in the northeast region. The angry youth vandalized the NPP office at Nalerigu, claiming that the ruling government played a role in the issuing of the arrest warrant for the Nairi. You see how that situation is becoming very, very problematic. The final story, very quickly. Trade and Industry Minister Designate Katie Hammond has disclosed that the country loses more than $164 million a year to the importation of animal products such as guts, bladders, and stomachs other than fish. Why is it, he says, that everything you can think about is being imported to this country, which has a terrible effect on our currency? He quizzed and asked, it is about time we took a serious look at this particular issue. It has been decided at that level that we should look at 50 specific areas where it is important to look at the issue of import substitution. The president started talking about it, but it's easier said than done. So 3 issues you can look at in some 2 minutes. The attempt to arrest the Nairi and the chief he's installed, NPP-NDC fight over the number of ministers, and all these imports and what Katie Hammond says. Lawyer Painsil. Hello?
Ministers. That is what has brought about the larger debate of the size of the government. And I really have my doubt if the two, they fit into the same space. Fair enough. The ministerial approval, of those who have been nominated by the president is provided by the Constitution, and Parliament or its appointment committee is required to look at whether they are fit for those offices that the president has nominated them for. And at the end of the day, recommend to Parliament whether, they pass. In other words, whether they are fit for purpose. And that is one work in itself. There's a larger question of whether the ministers that the president has appointed or the appointment the president has made is not too large enough. That discussion did not start, today. But why they must use the present opportunity to rub it in is a matter of politics. And whichever way it goes, I believe that Ghanaians should be the better for it. That's point number one. The issue of the Nairi, like you said, is a delicate issue. But in fairness to government can also not sit by and watch on to see a potential conflagration. And therefore, it is a careful balance between maintaining the peace and also allowing things to go the way it is. And I would say that when it comes to these matters, the security apparatus in this country must not be shaken by any group of people in this country. It's a very sensitive issue, but the insensitivity will not be the only reason why the security apparatus must look on for the a developing matter to blow out of proportions. And the third issue you raise is which of the issue? Which third issue is? There's a third issue. Hello?
Yes, so I spoke about the Nairi issue, which you have touched on, the MPP
Yeah.
NDC over new ministers, and the importation of Wile, guts, and other things.
You know, I believe it's an indictment. I'm very sorry. I'm embarrassed that this is coming for a trade minister designate. He's been part of the government, even though he's not a minister. And therefore, the commentary that he passes is something that we need to pass on to the government, because maybe for one reason, maybe because he's mentioned it, let's hope that he knows what to do. Other than that, it can be a part of the government and claim that this situation has been festering for so long and is costing us so much. The real issues in life is not how to identify problems, but how to solve the problems. And I'm only hopeful that once he has mentioned it, we will measure his administration by the decisions that he takes to ensure that possibly a year from now, that situation will either be non-existent or possibly reduced drastically. That's the way I want to comment on that particular comment that the minister designate said.
Okay. So we also have the finder. Foreign trips will not be approved. That is according to Firma Opari Osei, who page chief of staff. So let's go to page 2 and check out that story quickly before we leave. Foreign trips will not be approved. So the Chief of Staff at the Office of the President, Mrs. Firma Osei Opari, has warned heads of all public entities that without the submission of their 2023 foreign travel plans to the office, requests for such travels will not be approved. So the plan must be submitted with relevant documents, and only essential travels will be approved. An invitation is not obligation to attend. And so she also imposed that no foreign travel for board members. We also have Occupy Ghana rejects secret and confidential mark on cabinet's response. So they have asked government to remove the secret and confidential tag it placed on its response to a right to information request that it received from the group to enable Occupy Ghana publish the contents of the response. You can just react to the foreign trips will not be approved story before we let you go.
Yeah, you know, some of these things that they say, it's like the typical issue of bailing the cat. Everybody knows what to do. It's how to do it and who must do it. You know, because these problems have been there for generations and we all talk about it and we go back and then we do the same thing. So this is not something that I really need to express any particular joy or happiness with what she has said. It's about doing it. We dare her to do what she says she will do. Because people get into government space, people with due respect, who never traveled before, and all of a sudden, they are traveling business, they are traveling first class, they are traveling how many times in a month, unnecessary trips, people going for conferences which they are not even fit for. It's, oh man, the figures are there, and it's like it's everything in Ghana is self-inflicted, because we're a country where we know how right to do everything, but somehow we do the very thing we're not supposed to do, and we turn around like children that in a conversation. And that's the way it is. I mean, must a minister come out, even this, I don't even need to say it, just implement it, just go ahead and do it. That's the way it must be. I mean, listen, there's a massive abuse of traveling opportunities across the ministries, across departments. Oh man, please. I mean, sometimes it's very frustrating in talking about some of the problems that we have because we know the right thing to do. You find a minister who wants to attend, possibly, or a director or a board member who wants a board member. What has it got to do with traveling on a department or on a minister? What has it got to do with it? You are not party to anything that is done at the management level. And when you attend those conferences, who does it benefit? And these things are pleasure trips, you know. And of course, we are not even talking about what they call it, the daily bonuses and daily. That is about all. That is about all.
Right.
So please, tell her to do it.
let's take a look at a few more papers and wrap up the conversation. There's this international story, in fact, a number of them in the Daily Guide that I did not take. I just want to pick out three of them. Mugabe's son arrested after cars trashed a party. You should see that story. North Korea launches more missiles as Kim Jong-un's sister warns of using Pacific as our firing range. The last time they fired missiles, it entered Japan's territorial waters. And third person cured of HIV after stem cell transplant. You know, stem cell transplants have got a few people, at least two of them in the past. I read of one recently, and now a third person has been able to do that. Who knows, over time, inch by inch, little by little, we could get there where we are actually able to cure HIV. You know, at a point, there was no cure for syphilis, for example. And it's wiped out lots of populations. But from my end to wrap, graphic business, no dividend for bank shareholders. DDEP erodes profits. You should actually see the cartoon. Pill for individual bondholders. And it no be joke matter.
It no be joke. By force.
Charlie.
Take it.
So if 2020 was tough for banks and their shareholders, then 2022 was tougher. Management and shareholders of the lenders are set to miss out on their bonuses and dividends for last year after the DDEP eroded the bank's profits, making it almost impossible for such payments against the 2022 financial year. That's the story. It also has government to pay coupons on matured domestic bonds and asset declaration laws shielding corrupt public officers. Finally, Economy Times, inflation to begin easing. We've already seen signs of that. Economic activity shrinks sharply. That's in Ghana. And Ghana's long-term credit worthiness downgraded. It's been downgraded further to restricted default, RD, from C. We were at C. Now it's been brought down to RD by the international rating agency, FIT. Now, the issue ratings on local currency bonds issued domestically have also been downgraded to default. That is D from C. And that's the latest there. Is there anything brief that you would like to add, Mr. Painter?
I just I've got this passing commentary on this domestic exchange program, the domestic debt exchange program. My only take on it so far is that it's very regrettable because, see, I believe that it destroyed the confidence that Ghanaians have in the government when it comes to these issues of bonds. And I believe that for a long time, I'm wondering how, these bonds are going to perform on the market. And I'm really having my doubts, even for people like me who never even invested in the area, whether I would ever be attracted. And so for some time to come, there's going to be a lingering issue, not only for this government, but for successive governments, about how they can attract Ghanaians to economic programs like that. And that's the sad thing that I've been reflecting upon. And that's the way I want to end my take on these issues. That's about all.
Thank you so much, Lawyer Painter, for joining the conversation this morning. We wish you the very best of the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
And he joined us for that conversation. Just to wrap with these headlines, the Daily Dispatch, Ghana was on track till COVID and Russia-Ukraine war. That's according to the IMF boss. And gold for oil, we will keenly monitor every step in value chain. That's according to the energy minister.
One interesting one. Japanese team in Ghana to help clean Galamsey polluted rivers.
What?
The Japanese team, this is the Ghanaian Times, Japanese team in Ghana to help clean Galamsey polluted rivers.
Japanese team in Ghana to help what?
Clean
Galamsey
polluted rivers.
Let me speak P. Just say what I'm saying to it. So we cannot do anything in this country unless someone from some foreign land comes to teach us. Especially when we know how to do the pollution, but we don't know how to do the cleaning.
Hello?
Yeah?
Please go ahead.
But that's not even the real issue. The real issue is that Galamsey is still going on. So how do we clean what we are doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the real issue. Because I have not seen any serious attempt at stemming the tide of this Galamsey thing. There was ever a time, I remember maybe 3 or 4 years back, that we were shown pictures or forms of some of these waters that were regaining their natural state. And all of a sudden, everything went asunder. And now we have reverted to the status quo ante, the position that it was before all these things came. We don't have the clean water any longer. And I'm not convinced that the Galamsey fight itself has been won. Yes, we may attempt to clean up the waters, but if the source of the pollution itself has not been stopped, it's a funny game. Like pouring water in a basket. That's the way I would describe the picture. Let the Japanese come. They'll come and take their money. They don't do these things for free anyway. So what it means is that in 2 years, Ghana will have accrued such a huge bill of foreigners who have come here, experts who have come here, in a pretended attempt to clean our waters when the source of the pollution is still there. What are we doing?
Thank you, Lawyer Pato. Very important points you make. Yeah. And we wish you the best of the day. And this is how we cap off the news review, but it's been brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. We're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. Locate us in Accra Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Chronomabwehia behind the Angel Educational Complex, Takrade, Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Techiman Hanswa, Esiama Enzima. Reach us on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Time now, Mapitsa, for us to get into
some sports. Moftana Billa is standing by.
Some team is known to be, we have a game in hand, FC. We'll see how he'll come and tell us, give us more details.
Let's see how it goes. Up next is sports.